I never thought I'd become a criminal to save myself from my own family. But there I was, at 2 in the morning on Thanksgiving night, staring at a fraudulent loan document with my forged signature, realizing that the people who raised me had just destroyed my entire future without a second thought. Let me back up. My name is Sophia Vance, and for 29 years, I'd been the invisible daughter in a family that only had eyes for Golden Boy Leo. The Thanksgiving dinner that changed everything started like all the others, cold and suffocating despite the warmth of our sprawling estate in Greenwich, Connecticut. I'd driven up from Chicago specifically to share 2 pieces of incredible news with my parents, Arthur and Eleanor Vance. After 7 years of grinding away at one of the most competitive investment firms in the Midwest, I'd finally been promoted to vice president. At 29, I was one of the youngest people in the company's history to reach that position. And even more importantly, I was engaged to Ben, the most wonderful man I'd ever met. I should have known better than to expect anything resembling enthusiasm. The dining room was decorated with the kind of tasteful opulence that screamed old money, but the atmosphere was anything but warm. My mother, Eleanor, sat ramrod straight in her silk blouse and pearls. My father, Arthur, dominated the head of the table in his tailored suit. And there was Leo, my older brother by 3 years, slouched in his chair with that entitled smirk I'd grown to despise. I waited for a lull in the conversation, which inevitably centered on Leo's latest venture, some luxury app that nobody seemed to understand. When he finally paused, I cleared my throat. I have some really exciting news to share. I just found out last week that I've been promoted to vice president at the firm. It's a huge step up, and I'll be managing a portfolio worth over $300 million. My father glanced up from his plate, his expression barely changing. "That's nice, Sophia," he said flatly, already turning back to Leo. "So Leo, you were saying about the Series B funding. How much are you looking to raise?" The familiar sting of dismissal washed over me, but I'd prepared for this. I lifted my left hand where my engagement ring caught the light. "There's more. Ben proposed 2 weeks ago, and I said yes. We're engaged." My mother's eyes flicked to the ring for approximately 2 seconds. Her lips pursed slightly. "It's adequate," she said coolly. "I assume he comes from a respectable family?" Before I could answer, my father cut in. "We can discuss that later. This is important, what Leo's talking about." And just like that, I ceased to exist again. I sat there, my announcement hanging in the air like smoke, dissipating into nothing. The dinner dragged on for another hour. Nobody asked me a single question. When dessert was finally cleared, I excused myself and went upstairs to my childhood bedroom. I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the times I'd tried to earn their approval. The perfect grades, the full scholarship to Northwestern, the 3 part-time jobs I'd juggled during college while Leo partied his way through USC on their dime. The monthly checks I'd been sending home for 7 years, $500 that I could barely afford at first, money I'd been told was needed for household expenses. I'd given and given and given, and it was never enough. Around 2 in the morning, I gave up trying to sleep and crept downstairs. As I passed my father's study, I heard voices. Low, tense, urgent. The door was slightly ajar. I should have kept walking, but something in those voices made me pause. "You need to find more money, Arthur. The trust fund is almost completely depleted." That was my mother, her voice edged with panic. "Leo's new car alone was $60,000, and the credit card bills keep piling up." "I know. I'm working on it. The new loan should come through any day now." "But Dad, the bank said they need a co-signer with perfect credit." Leo sounded worried. "My credit score is trashed after that last business failed. And you and Mom already have too much debt." There was a long pause. I held my breath in the darkness. "We have Sophia." My father's voice turned cold, calculating. "Her credit score is the only asset this family has left that's worth anything. She owes us that much." "Are you sure she'll agree to it?" my mother asked. My father laughed harshly. "We won't ask her to agree. She's just a tool, a signature. Without the Vance name, she's worthless. Everything she has because of us." "It's only $5 million, Leo chimed in. "Once the business picks up again, we'll pay it back. She doesn't even need to know about it." I felt my legs go weak. $5 million. They were planning to take out a $5 million loan in my name without my knowledge or consent. They were going to forge my signature and use my identity to save my father's failing business and continue funding Leo's extravagant lifestyle. This wasn't just dismissiveness anymore. This was fraud. This was criminal. I don't remember walking back to my room. The next thing I knew, I was sitting on my bed, shaking, my phone clutched in my hand. Every dismissal, every casual cruelty suddenly made horrible sense. I'd never been their daughter. I'd been a resource to be exploited. My hands were trembling as I logged into my credit monitoring account. And there it was, a new hard inquiry from a bank I barely recognized, dated 3 days ago. There was a business loan application for $5 million, guaranteed by a personal cosigner. That cosigner, complete with my social security number and employment information, was me. The signature was forged. I spent the rest of the night investigating. My father's construction company was hemorrhaging money. There were liens, unpaid bills, and multiple defaulted loans. The company was on the verge of bankruptcy. This $5 million loan wasn't going to save anything, and if it defaulted, I would be the one left holding the bag. My perfect credit would be destroyed. My career in finance would be over. As the sun started to rise, I realized something had fundamentally shifted inside me. That desperate little girl who craved her parents' love was gone, burned away by betrayal. In her place was someone who finally understood her own worth. I took a shower, put on my best suit, and did my makeup with careful precision. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman who was done apologizing for existing. I found them in the dining room at breakfast. I walked straight to the table and placed my tablet down in front of my father, the screen displaying the fraudulent loan application. "I want you to explain to me how my signature ended up on a $5 million loan guarantee," I said, my voice cold as ice. My father's face went through several transformations. Surprise, then calculation, then anger. "You went through my private business documents? How dare you invade my privacy?" "Your privacy?" I let out a bitter laugh. "That's rich, considering you used my social security number and forged my signature. That's identity theft. That's fraud. That's a federal crime." "Don't be dramatic," my mother snapped. "This is family business. You have a responsibility." "Responsibility?" I turned to her. "Let's talk about responsibility. I've sent you $500 every single month for 7 years. That's $42,000. Where did that money actually go? And then there's Grandma Helen's inheritance. She left me $8,000. You convinced me to put it into the family trust. That money funded Leo's failed cryptocurrency venture, didn't it?" Leo looked uncomfortable. "Sophia, look, that was an investment opportunity. You lost every penny within 6 months. But that was fine because it wasn't your money. It was mine. Money from the only person in this family who ever actually loved me." "How dare you suggest we don't love you?" my mother said, her voice trembling. "You did the bare minimum required by law," I shot back. "Do you want to know what I did to get through Northwestern? I worked 3 jobs simultaneously. I slept 4 hours a night. I lived on ramen." Meanwhile, Leo was driving a BMW at USC, taking spring break trips to Cabo. "That's different," my father interjected. "Leo is the heir. He needs to maintain certain standards." "And I didn't?" I slammed my hand on the table. "I built my career from nothing, with no help from any of you. I am a vice president at 29, and last night you couldn't even pretend to care for 5 seconds." "You're being ungrateful," my mother said coldly. "No, I'm being honest. This loan you took out in my name, it's fraud. The penalty is up to 30 years in federal prison. And when your company defaults, which it will, the bank will come after me. They'll destroy my credit, and I'll lose everything. And you don't care. You were willing to sacrifice me completely to maintain your lifestyle." Leo spoke up, his voice small. "We were going to pay it back." I looked at my brother. "With what money? The company is broke. You're broke. The only reason you're still driving that car and living in a penthouse is because Mom and Dad are willing to commit crimes to keep funding you. Get out." My father stood up, his face purple with rage. "Get out of this house. You're just a selfish, ungrateful brat." "Gladly," I said, picking up my tablet. "But I want you to understand something. I'm not going to let you destroy my life. I'm going to fight this, and I'm going to win." I walked out with my head held high, leaving behind 29 years of trying to be good enough. I drove straight to the airport and caught the first flight back to Chicago. The moment I got home, I called Ben. "I need you. Not as my fiancé, as the best lawyer I know. My family just committed fraud, and I need to make sure they don't destroy my life. And then I'm going to make them pay." He arrived 20 minutes later. I told him everything. He listened intently, his jaw tightening as the full scope became clear. "This is serious," he said. "This is criminal fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. Your father could go to prison." "Good," I said flatly. "Are you sure? Once we start down this road, there's no going back." I thought about the little girl who'd always tried so hard to be noticed. They stopped being my family the moment they decided to use me like a credit card, I'm sure. Over the next week, Ben and I crafted a strategy. First, we had to protect me. Ben helped me file fraud alerts with all 3 credit bureaus, freezing my credit. Then, we sent a formal legal notice to the bank, informing them the signature was forged. We filed a police report for identity theft. The bank immediately froze the loan and launched an investigation. My father's company wouldn't see a penny, but we didn't stop there. Ben connected me with a forensic accountant and a private investigator. What they found was worse than I'd imagined. My father hadn't just been running a failing business. He'd been cooking the books for years, hiding losses, evading taxes. There were falsified invoices, unreported income, and shell companies designed to hide money from the IRS. "This is serious federal crime territory," the forensic accountant told us. "Tax evasion, wire fraud, securities fraud. Your father is looking at serious prison time if this gets out." "It's going to get out," I said. But not yet. We spent another week assembling evidence. Every fraudulent transaction, every tax evasion scheme, every falsified document. And then, Ben had a brilliant idea. What if we approach them as investors? Your father is desperate. What if I represent a fictional investment group interested in acquiring distressed assets? We could get them to the negotiating table, then reveal who we really are and what we know. We give them a choice: surrender everything voluntarily or face federal prosecution. Let's do it, I said. Ben set up a shell company and reached out to my father's lawyer with a proposal. Given my father's desperate situation, he jumped at it. The meeting was scheduled 2 weeks later at a conference room in Manhattan. My father, mother, and Leo would all be present. They had no idea who they'd actually be meeting. The day arrived. Ben and I dressed impeccably and arrived early. At exactly 2 o'clock, my family walked in. The moment they saw me, all conversation stopped. They froze. "Hello, Dad, Mom, Leo." I gestured to the chairs. "Please sit down. We have a lot to discuss." "What the hell is this?" my father demanded. "This is a business meeting," Ben said calmly. "Mr. Vance, you were contacted about a potential acquisition of your company. That would be us." I opened my folder and slid a document across the table. This is a comprehensive forensic analysis of Vance Construction's finances going back 10 years. It documents systematic tax evasion, wire fraud, securities fraud, and the attempted identity theft against me. The color drained from their faces. "You had no right," my mother whispered. "Actually, I had every right. You tried to destroy my life. Now, you're going to listen very carefully." Ben took over. "You have 2 options. Option 1, you sign over complete control of all assets to a liquidation trust that Miss Vance and I will administer. This includes the Greenwich House, all vehicles, all accounts, and any other property. The trust will sell these assets and use the proceeds to pay off your debts. You'll be left with enough money to rent a modest apartment and cover basic living expenses for 6 months. "You can't do this," Leo burst out. "This is extortion." "No," I said coldly. "Extortion would be demanding money to keep quiet. We're offering you a way to avoid federal prison. Option 2. If you refuse, we immediately turn over every piece of evidence to the IRS, FBI, SEC, and State Attorney General. You'll be prosecuted to the fullest extent. Your father is looking at 20 to 30 years, your mother 10 to 15, and Leo 5 to 10. The room was silent except for my mother's labored breathing. "You would send your own parents to prison?" my father asked quietly. "You tried to destroy my entire future without blinking. Don't talk to me about family loyalty. You made me feel worthless my entire life. You dismissed every achievement. Then you decided to use me as collateral damage. You don't get to play the victim now." My mother started crying. I felt nothing. "We need time to think," my father said. "You have 5 minutes," Ben said. "After that, we walk out and go straight to the federal building." They huddled together, whispering urgently. After 4 minutes, my father raised his head. "We'll sign." "Smart choice," Ben said, pulling out documents. "These are the transfer agreements." They signed. Each signature was like a nail in the coffin of the family I'd once hoped to be part of. "There's one more thing," I said. "Any money left over after paying your debts is going into a charitable foundation. The Helen Vance Memorial Scholarship Fund, named after Grandma, will provide financial literacy, education, and scholarships to young women from disadvantaged backgrounds. Women who, like me, have to fight for everything. Women who deserve better than to be treated as tools." My mother looked up at me. "Sophia, please, we're your family." "No. Family doesn't treat each other the way you treated me. Family doesn't commit crimes against each other. You're not my family. You haven't been for a long time." I just finally accepted it. Ben and I walked out and didn't look back. As we rode the elevator down, I felt lighter than I had in years. The next few months were a whirlwind. The liquidation trust worked exactly as planned. The Greenwich House sold for $3.2 million. My father's company was dissolved. The luxury cars were repossessed. Investment accounts were liquidated. My parents moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in Stamford. My father got a job as a project manager for a local construction firm. My mother took a position as a receptionist at a medical office. Leo ended up taking a job at a Starbucks in Queens. I drove past once and saw him through the window in his green apron, looking exhausted. I didn't go in. As for me, my life flourished. The promotion turned into another promotion 6 months later. I became one of the youngest senior vice presidents in the firm's history. Ben and I got married in a small ceremony in Lincoln Park. No one from the Vance side was invited. The Helen Vance Memorial Scholarship Fund became my passion project. We set it up with the remaining funds from the liquidation trust, about $400,000 after all debts were paid. The first year, we provided full scholarships to 5 young women. At our first scholarship ceremony, I looked at these bright, fierce young women and thought about how different my life might have been with this kind of support. One evening about a year later, I was working late when my phone rang. Unknown number. Sophia. It was my father's voice, older and more tired. Please don't hang up. I stayed on the line. I wanted to tell you that I'm sorry. For everything. You were right about all of it. I was a terrible father. I treated you like you didn't matter, and you mattered more than anything. You were the strong one all along, and I was too blind to see it. I destroyed everything because I couldn't admit that my son was a failure and my daughter was exceptional. I closed my eyes. Thank you for saying that, but it doesn't change anything. I know. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. I see you now. And I'm proud of you, even though I have no right to be. Goodbye, Dad, I said softly, and ended the call. I sat there for a long time. Part of me felt a flicker of something. Not forgiveness, but perhaps a tiny sliver of closure. Ben arrived with takeout, and I told him about the call. How do you feel? He asked. I don't know. It doesn't change what happened. But maybe it's enough to know that he finally understands what he lost. We ate and talked about normal things. The vacation we were planning, the new apartment we were considering. It was comfortable and warm and real. Later, I stood in front of the shadow box on our bedroom wall. Inside was a tarnished brass key, the only thing of my grandmother's I'd kept. She'd given it to me when I was 7. This was the key to my first apartment, she'd told me, the place I lived when I left my parents' house and started my own life. I was terrified and exhilarated and free. Keep this, Sophia. Someday you'll understand why it matters. I understood now. She'd been trying to tell me it was okay to leave, okay to choose yourself, okay to walk away from people who hurt you even if they were family. Beneath the key was a small brass plaque I'd had engraved, Veritas, truth, because that's what had set me free. 6 months later, I got a letter from Leo. He wrote about how he'd spent his life coasting on my parents' money, never developing real skills, how he'd been jealous of me because, deep down, he'd known I was the competent one. He apologized for everything. He didn't ask for forgiveness, just said he was trying to become better. I wrote back, just a short note saying I appreciated his honesty and wished him well. I didn't offer forgiveness or friendship, but I didn't slam the door completely shut either. My mother never reached out. I didn't particularly care. Some wounds were too deep. The scholarship fund continued to grow. By the 3rd year, we were supporting 12 students. I met with each personally, mentored them. One girl, Maria, reminded me especially of myself. She was 20, working 2 jobs while taking a full course load, supporting her younger siblings because her parents had addiction issues. How did you do it? She asked me once. How did you get from where I am to where you are? I learned to value myself even when the people who were supposed to love me didn't, I said. I learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from people who hurt you, even if they're family. And I learned that success built on your own merit is worth more than anything handed to you by people who don't respect you. She nodded, absorbing that. My family keeps telling me I'm selfish for focusing on school instead of giving them more money. Real family supports your growth and wants what's best for you. People who only value you for what you can give them aren't family. They're just people who share your DNA. You have the right to choose yourself. I watched something click into place in her face. 5 years after the confrontation, Ben and I had our first child, a daughter we named Helen. Holding her in the hospital, I made a silent promise. She would never wonder if she was valued. She would know, every single day, that she mattered. I thought about calling my parents to tell them they had a granddaughter. But then I thought about how they'd treated me, and I put the phone down. Some cycles needed to be broken. Helen would grow up surrounded by real love. The scholarship fund held its 5th annual ceremony overlooking Lake Michigan. By then, we were supporting 20 students and had helped 15 others graduate and launch successful careers. I stood at the podium, looking at these incredible young women. 5 years ago, I was exactly where many of you are now. Working multiple jobs, fighting for every opportunity, trying to prove my worth to people who couldn't see it. I thought that if I just worked hard enough, achieved enough, was perfect enough, the people I loved would finally value me. But I learned something important. You can't earn love from people who don't know how to give it. You can't prove your worth to people who have already decided you're worthless. I paused. What you can do is recognize your own value. You can set boundaries. You can demand respect. You can walk away from situations that diminish you, even when it's scary. And you can build a life that reflects your true worth. The applause was deafening. I saw myself in every single one of them. I also started writing. My blog grew, and eventually a literary agent reached out. Invisible Daughter, Breaking Free from Family Dysfunction and Discovering Your Worth, was published 2 years after Helen was born. At every book signing, people shared their stories with me. Adult children of narcissists, scapegoated siblings, people financially abused by family members. The details were different, but the pain was the same. At a signing in Boston, a young man approached with tears in his eyes. My father took out credit cards in my name and maxed them out. I'm 25, and my credit is destroyed. I've been too scared to report it. But after reading your book, I realize I have to choose myself. You do, I told him. It's going to be hard, and you're going to feel guilty. But your future is worth fighting for. You're worth fighting for. 10 years after that Thanksgiving night, I stood in my corner office on the 45th floor downtown. I'd been promoted to chief investment officer, the youngest in the firm's history. The view was spectacular. On my desk was a photo of Ben, Helen, and our son Marcus. Next to it was the shadow box with Grandma Helen's key, and next to that was a letter I'd received that morning. It was from my mother. The first direct communication in a decade. She wrote that she'd been in therapy for 5 years, working through her own childhood trauma. She didn't make excuses, but tried to explain. Her own mother had valued sons over daughters, and she'd internalized that misogyny. She wrote that she understood if I never wanted to see her again, but she hoped I knew she was sorry. I read it 3 times, feeling complicated things. Not forgiveness, maybe not ever, but perhaps a tiny crack in the wall of anger. I didn't write back, not yet. Maybe someday, maybe never. Both options were okay. What mattered was that I'd built a life I was proud of, a career I'd earned, a family I'd created with intention and love, a legacy through the scholarship fund, a voice through my book that reached people who needed to hear they weren't alone. That evening, I came home to chaos. Helen was practicing piano, Marcus was building block towers. Ben was attempting to cook while managing both kids. "Mommy!" They shrieked and ran to me. I scooped them up, breathing in pure, unconditional love. After the kids were in bed, Ben and I sat on our porch with wine, watching the stars. "What do you think?" he asked about my mother's letter. "I think she's trying. But some things can't be fixed. She can't give me back my childhood. An apology doesn't automatically grant access to my life or my children's lives. Whatever you decide, I support you." I might write back eventually, not to reconcile but to acknowledge her effort, but that's all. She doesn't get to be part of this life I've built. My phone buzzed. An email from Maria, now working at Goldman Sachs. "Dear Sophia, I just accepted a VP position at 25. I got here because I believed I deserved it. My parents called to tell me I was being selfish for not sending them more money. I told them I loved them, but I wasn't their ATM. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. But I remembered what you said about choosing yourself. Thank you for teaching me I was worth choosing." I smiled, feeling gratitude. My pain had meant something. It had been transformed into something that helped others. "What is it?" Ben asked. "Just another life changed. Another woman learning to choose herself. Like you did. Like I did." Later, I took Grandma Helen's key out and held it. I thought about her courage to leave her own toxic family in an era when women had far fewer options. "Thank you, Grandma," I whispered. "I finally understand." I climbed into bed next to Ben. Outside, Chicago hummed with life. Somewhere out there, young women were working late shifts and dreaming of better futures. Some would face the choice I'd faced. I hoped they would have the courage to choose themselves. As for me, I'd already made my choice. I'd walked through fire and come out stronger. I'd turned betrayal into empowerment, pain into purpose. I wasn't invisible anymore. I never would be again. And that was worth more than all the approval I'd never gotten, because the only approval I truly needed was my own, and I'd finally learned to give it to myself. I closed my eyes and drifted off, content in the knowledge that the girl who'd been a tool, nothing more than a credit score to be exploited, had become a woman who knew her worth. And no one, not family, not anyone, would ever make me forget it again.